Okay, Year 9 students, let's start with Chapter 2, starting at page 25. So where we left off was that Primrose's name has been called in the reaping. And immediately, because of the first-person narration, we have an insight into Katniss's immediate reaction and the intense shock, horror that she feels, represented through the extended metaphor simile here, where she connects how she feels, unable to breathe, unable to speak, stunned, the same way when she fell 3 meters to the ground out of a tree when she was young. And she's horrified. This can't be happening. The odds of Prim's name being chosen when her own name was in there like 22 times, I think, and Gail's in there 40 times, and she's done everything to protect Prim, and it's still, the odds are not in her favour. And the immediate reaction of the crowd is they are unhappy. They don't like it when a 12-year-old is chosen. It's not fair. And that idea of fairness and the injustice and the unfairness of this dystopian world that Suzanne Collins creates is really encouraging readers to reflect on the things that are unjust in our world too, the unfairnesses that exists. Anyway, Prim immediately, her actions, so she walks up to the front and it's an untucked blouse that forms a duck tail that really shocks Katniss out of herself. And I guess it's triggering her, reminding her of her protective role in Prim's life, the mess with her clothes. She's young, she still needs protection. And Katniss's strangled cry really reveals her sense of powerlessness and agony and deep pain, and compels her to immediately volunteer in place of Prim. And they say the word in District 12, the word tribute is synonymous, has the same meaning as the word corpse. Basically, everyone's going to die. And so Katniss's act here, extremely heroic act, essentially is taking Prim's death on, sacrificing herself in her place. And Prim is hysterical. She's holding on to her sister, saying, you can't go. But Katniss, even from this point, so bottom of 27, Katniss is strategizing, and she doesn't want to cry because when they televise the replay of the reapings, that she doesn't want everyone to see her tears. And that the characterization of Katniss is something to really keep in mind, from her strategic thinking, and the fact that she's learnt, in Chapter 1 we read how she learnt to watch her words and put on a mask, and so basically survival, so not saying the wrong thing, and the way that she's covered her emotions, reactions, thoughts and feelings as a child, is that kind of preparing her for this moment here in her life in a way. And so Katniss comes to, or steps up onto the stage, and I thought something that's really worth noticing at the bottom of page 28 is the reaction of the people of District 12. So to the everlasting credit of the people, not one person claps. So Effie Trinket invites a round of applause, but nobody claps. And not even the ones who are betting. And that idea of the crassness, the callousness of betting over which child is going to die, essentially, again, just reinforces the harshness of this futuristic society that Suzanne Collins has created. But in contrast to this, Katniss's act of heroism, sacrificing herself for her sister, just makes it reinforces that sense of unfairness. That this Hunger Games and the manipulative control of the government through fear-mongering is so unfair. And they know that she's Prim's sister. Prim, everybody loves, but Katniss, perhaps not so much, because she has been distant and aloof. But maybe she's done something in this moment to earn their love. Or maybe they admire her for who she is. We don't really know, but what the people do is, and I love this quote, they take part in the boldest form of dissent that they can manage. And I really suggest that Suzanne Collins' views as an author can be seen here, that the importance of courage, the importance of standing up, and in whatever way you can. So Katniss's courage is applauded through her volunteering, but here the courage of the audience in this bold form of dissent, which is silence, which doesn't feel like a lot of dissent. It's just saying nothing when you're supposed to applaud. But it is a collective, it's a beginning of unity where the people are having their voices heard, or lack thereof, but that this silence says, we do not agree, we do not condone, all of this is wrong, we do not approve of this. And then something totally unexpected happens. So along with the silence, they give this symbolic gesture. And one, then another, then almost every member of the crowd. They touch their 3 middle fingers of the left hand to their lips and hold it out to her. It is an old, rarely used gesture of the district, occasionally seen at funerals, and means thanks. It means admiration. It means goodbye to someone you love. And you'll notice that repetition there, the rule of 3. It means. It's really reinforcing the significance of this symbolic gesture, that it represents the unity, but it's equally a gesture in a way of rebellion, because by honouring Katniss, they're condemning the capital. And at this point, she does feel like crying, but Haymitch, fortunately, chooses this time, staggering on the stage to congratulate her, and he reeks of liquor, and I like her, lots of spunk, more than you. He points, more than you, he shouts, and points directly into the camera. Now, it's interesting here, the characterization of Haymitch. She's certainly set up to be a fool, but one can't help but think, is this interruption by Haymitch strategic to stop her from crying and to take a moment to accuse those in the capital of being cowardly, more because he's pointing directly at the camera there. Is he addressing the audience, or he's so drunk that he might actually be taunting the capital? This is the internal monologue. I'll never know. And then Haymitch plummets off the stage and knocks himself unconscious. And thankfully, that means that the cameras are off her. But I know I was right about not running off. So she wishes she'd have gone with Gale and fled, and when he asked her. But she also knows that she was right, because nobody else would have volunteered for Prim. And then if Trinket comes back, she's warbling, which is kind of tweeting like a bird. What an exciting day. Anyway. And then the next name is Peeta Mellark, and Katniss is horrified. She remembers him, and we're going to read about that. He's struggling to remain emotionless, and he walks up on the front, up onto the stage as well. There's the inquiry for volunteers, but nobody volunteers. Family devotion only goes so far for most people on Reaping Day. What I did was the radical thing. It's that idea that survival has led people to turn against their own family or lose their humanity. Their own. Losing what's best about humanity. But is it truly lost if Katniss can stand up and be honoured for her sacrificial act? And then there is this, enters into this flashback where linguistically you'll notice it shifts from present tense to past tense. So yeah, notice that part of the reason that this novel feels like it's happening, it's immediate and urgent, is the use of first person narration and present tense, whereas flashbacks shift into past tense. So there's this flashback with just after the mine accident that killed her dad. And they immediately have like 1 month's worth of money. But after that, her mum's supposed to go and get a job, but she didn't. She didn't do anything but sit in a chair or lay in the blankets in the bed. So mum's had essentially a full breakdown. And now, I suppose, I know that she was locked in a world of sadness, but at that time she was only 11 years old. Prim was 7. She was head of the family, which is a huge burden of responsibility on a 11-year-old child who is forced to grow up and to look after her family at such a young age. And that theme of growing up and the, taking responsibility, the burdens of adulthood can certainly be seen there. So starving. So the money ran out and they were starving to death. She was just holding on till she could turn 12 and sign up for the Tesserae. And there's this description of starvation and how it's common or not uncommon in District 12. And one day you'll just see somebody killed over dead. It's officially not starvation, it's the flu or pneumonia, but everyone knows it's starvation. And anyway, so there's this one day where she's in the rain, she's icy, there's a real sense of desperation that you can read. She's shaking. She dropped this sense of baby clothes in a puddle. So she was going to try and sell them, but nobody wanted the clothes, and she was stumbling, trying what to do. And the wealthiest town people, the merchants that live above their businesses, she was wandering through that section, and she wasn't going to steal because it's punishable by death, but she thought she'd look in the rubbish bins. But when she smelt the bread and she passed the bakers, she is mesmerised. She's smell of life. But then the baker's wife screams at her and uses ugly words, accuses her of pouring through the rubbish, and then this boy, Peeta, looks at her and afterwards comes out with two large loaves of bread that must have fallen into the fire and they got burnt. Mum screams at him, said to feed it to the pig. No one decent's going to buy that bread. He begins to tear off chunks to toss it into the pig trough. But once Mum disappears, he actually throws the whole loaf of bread, the 2 loaves of bread, towards Katniss. He's punished for it, obviously. Well, he's punished for the burning by his mum. But then the loaves are actually fine except for the burnt bit. And there's a question, does he mean for me to have them? He must have. He's actually given it to her as a gesture of kindness. And so one note that I've written here, this bread is a symbol that represents kindness, generosity, hope. And it's not the only time the bread symbol appears. Later on, you'll see in the Hunger Games itself, District 11, after the death of Rue, actually send a loaf of bread to Katniss. And so that's that symbol of kindness, generosity. So alongside this place where the humanity has kind of been torn out of people, like they're so desperate that they almost can't be human anymore, there is still the capacity for genuine kindness and humanity that can be seen through this act of the giving of bread. And so I think that's something that Suzanne Collins is really trying to show, that importance of human kindness despite the circumstances, that looking out for others, being kind to others is always a good thing. And so they eat, and she actually says throwing the bread was an enormous kindness. And so we're on page 38 now. And then they eat the bread, Prim, Katniss and Mum, and then Katniss looks at, meets the eyes of Peeta, but just for a second, and Katniss is embarrassed. When you receive something and you can't give back, perhaps there's a sense of shame in that. And then when she drops her gaze, she sees the first dandelion of the year. And the dandelion is also a symbol. Flower symbols appear so much, and plant symbols appear so much in the novel. But the symbol of the dandelion is a fully edible weed, plant. Everything about the plant is edible. It's so high in carotene, in more than carrots, even vitamins, and it's basically, if you can see the dandelion, you know that you are going to survive. And so Katniss knows when she sees the dandelion, she knows how she's going to survive. And so she can't shake this connection between the bread that gave her hope and the dandelion that reminded her that she was not doomed, that there was a way out. She could that in nature, plants, she could actually find her way out. And then she remembers about hunting in the woods with her father, and she knows, I'm going to survive, and how we're going to survive. And she feels like she owes him something. She hates that. There's a sense of guilt now, because this person who'd done a big service to her, she's going to have to kill. And the anthem plays, they shake hands, the anthem plays, and that's the end of the chapter, which ends with, well, maybe I won't have to kill him. Odds are someone else will have to kill him before I do. Of course, the odds have not been very dependable of late. And that is the end of chapter 2. Thank you so much for joining me.